Whenever you're ready.
Okay, so here we go. So I used to go to the beaches of Lake Michigan as a child, and we'd drive across the country from Seattle and spend 2 weeks out there with cousins collecting shells, getting towed behind a boat in an inner tube, and having all sorts of fun. So in this photo, I'm the little boy in front of the green arrow. Well, one day up at Lake Michigan, I was walking on the beach and came across a stream. When I stepped into it, it was as warm as a hot tub. I looked up the stream and saw this huge facility, which was a labyrinth of pipes and belching smokestacks. I later came to find out that it was a steel manufacturing company. The river flowing past my legs was water used to cool the superheated metals. To scientists, you might call this thermal pollution, and that decreases oxygen in an area and kills all sorts of aquatic life developed for a certain type of temperature range. So making of steel also emits other types of toxins into the water and air, all sorts of carcinogenic stuff like cyanide and sulfides. Here are three particularly nasty compounds: sulfur dioxide, nitrogen, and 2 nitrogen oxides. Just remember, it is so no-no. So anyways, in addition to the larger environment, these toxins hurt our species. We don't know all of the effects yet, but we do know they're harmful to our eyes, lungs, the white matter in our brains, and our very sexual reproduction. So steel is bad, but we mustn't lose hope. Let's just think of the fly for a moment. It's normally considered a lowly and detestable animal, but now we view it as the star of American political debate and politics. We should have a similar hope for the steel industry. It can be sustainable. So this is a story of a company that's just a stone's throw from Asheville and Hickory, if you're there. They're called Nucor, and they're headquartered in Charlotte. So look at that. Isn't that inspirational? It's a hugely photoshopped image too, by the way. So much like this Frenchman, Nucor makes their money off of recycling steel. But you may wonder, is recycling all that good? And is it that much better than the alternative? There must be some downsides. Well, let's consider the alternative. So this is a blast furnace. These things are huge, as you can see. They use heated coal to melt iron ore, which then goes through a couple of other processes until it is finally steel. This is a highly polluting process. But this is what you would do when recycling steel. This is Mount Scrapmore at Biltmore Iron and Metal in Asheville. So you can use abundant scrap metal, and it doesn't require iron ore or the heated coal or blast furnace. Instead, you use a cheaper electronic arc furnace. So Nucor got really good at scrapping. Beginning in the 2000s, they started acquiring company after company in recycling, as you can see by these maps. These companies were in steel plating, recycling, rebar, transport. This is vertical integration, and this made them less dependent on foreign iron ore. So they became the largest scrap metal steel recycler in North America. Apparently, according to their site, in 2019, they recycled 18 million tons of scrap, which is 36 Burj Khalifa buildings. That's the biggest building in the world, by the way. But it's imperative that they don't just keep their operations here in the US, they have to share their practices with other countries. China produces a staggering 10 times what the US produces in steel. And as you look at these numbers, those are all in millions of metric tons. So China's annual steel production is equal to about 20,000 Titanic ships. And even Austria, which was at the end of that list, it still produces about 196 Titanic ships worth of steel. So we shouldn't be sinking all that pollution into our environment. If Nucor can share their best practices, pollution disparities like this one can be greatly reduced. China uses the blast furnaces, and we use a lot more of those smaller furnaces I mentioned. So Nucor can help China be cleaner. So now let's talk about vertical and horizontal integration. Steel industry is huge, and vertical integration is the way to go. It helps turn a highly fragmented process into one that's much more efficient and scaled. The Nucor example could be excellent for the Chinese and Indians and Japanese. So our love affair with steel began 153 years ago when Andrew Carnegie built the world's first all-steel bridge. And to win over public sentiment, he paraded an elephant across it. And ever since then, it's been a huge love affair we've had with it. So steel is not going anywhere in the foreseeable future. For us humans, it's basically what spit and feces and clay is to termites. It is our very important compound. But you may be asking yourself, with all this information, what can we do to help this huge industry? Well, in order for recycling to work, we need to scrap our metals right. So make sure that you're putting important metals like these ones, many of which you encounter on a daily basis, in the appropriate section of the landfill, in the right scrapyard, or in your recycled bin. So you've got a choice. Do you want to experience burning eyes, unhealthy lungs, and brain damage? Or do you want hikers like this to enjoy cleaner air and cleaner water? Now get out there and recycle your metals. That's it.
Woohoo! That was really interesting, and I learned a lot about Nucor and steel in general. But thank you for sharing that. And if everyone take a moment and share comments or questions with Andrew while I